What if the people closest to you are the very ones anchoring you to the ground you're desperate to rise from? What if your deepest stagnation isn't the fault of your failures, your lack of discipline, or even your fears, but the invisible threads woven by those you call friends? Nietzsche once wrote, "He who cannot command himself should obey, and many can command themselves, but much is still lacking before they can obey themselves." But how can you ever obey your own soul if you're still chained to the quiet expectations, the subtle norms, and the silent fears of those you keep close? Think about it. The people you let into your intimate circle shape your psychology more than your own thoughts sometimes do. We mirror their moods, inherit their limits, share their anxieties as if they were family heirlooms. Carl Jung called this the collective unconscious, a vast network of hidden agreements, shared wounds, and mirrored shadows. When you stand too close to someone, their demons start to whisper to you in your own voice. Their self-doubt becomes your caution. Their fear of rejection becomes your ceiling. Their small dreams start to feel like realistic goals to you. Have you ever noticed how easy it is to shrink in a room full of people who never dared to grow? Or how your boldest ideas die the moment you imagine telling them to your friends? That's not a coincidence. That's psychological gravity. It pulls you down to the level of the tribe. Because evolution taught us it's safer to belong than to stand alone. But Nietzsche wasn't interested in safety. He was obsessed with authenticity, with the brutal, luminous process of becoming who you truly are, even if it meant walking alone through the cold. And this is where the dark mirror of friendship reveals its cruelest trick. Most of your friends don't want you to change, not because they hate you, but because your evolution threatens the fragile balance of their own lives. When you grow, you force them to look at their own stagnation. When you heal, you remind them of their unprocessed wounds. When you chase something bigger, you expose how small their cage really is. So unconsciously, and sometimes very consciously, they'll keep you where they need you. They'll joke about your ambitions. They'll hesitate to celebrate your wins. They'll subtly steer conversations back to safe, comfortable, known territories. And you'll comply. Because the price of rebellion is loneliness. And for most people, loneliness is a heavier terror than mediocrity. But here's the savage truth Nietzsche would whisper into your wounds. You avoid suffering, and thus you avoid yourself. Your friendships are not neutral. They're either watering the roots of your deepest potential or choking them out before they ever see the sun. So before you blame yourself for being stuck, exhausted, uninspired, look around. Who stands beside you? Who claps when you win? Who shifts uncomfortably when you dare to become more? Maybe you'll realize your first cage was never built by your enemies. It was crafted carefully, tenderly by the hands of those who said they loved you. Smiling masks. The types of friends who keep you small. Not all enemies come with knives. Some come with soft smiles, warm hugs, and words that sound almost like love. Nietzsche believed that most people are more comfortable with comfort than with growth, and so they surround themselves, and you, with companions who reassure them that staying small is perfectly acceptable. But look closer. The people who pull you down rarely look like villains. They look like best friends, family, confidants. They're the ones whose opinions you treasure most, which makes their influence all the more lethal. Let's unmask them. 1. The gentle cage builder. They never outright tell you not to pursue your dreams. Instead, they pepper your ambitions with quiet doubts. Are you sure that's realistic? That sounds risky. What if it doesn't work out? They speak from love, from concern. But love that demands your stagnation is just fear wearing a tender face. 2. The secret rival. This one mirrors you, your goals, your style, your path, but not out of inspiration. Deep down, every step you take forward ignites a hidden competition. They measure themselves against your progress, celebrate your failures, and quietly strategize to keep one step ahead. Your friendship isn't rooted in mutual elevation. It's a secret race you never agreed to run. 3. The emotional leech. They need you, desperately. Your energy, your attention, your endless listening. Every time you interact, It's like handing them a piece of your life force. When you're drained, they disappear. When you're vibrant again, they return to feed. You mistake it for loyalty. It's just dependence on your vitality. 4. The applause addict. They're loudest when you're shining publicly. They like your posts, they beam at your parties, they're there for the show. But when the crowd is gone and you're alone in your darkness, silence. They're not in love with you. They're in love with the reflected glow of your moments on stage. 5. The guilt alchemist. They always manage to twist your choices into a moral debt. If you set a boundary, you're selfish. If you say no, you're uncaring. They keep you entangled in invisible contracts, paying emotional interest for simply daring to prioritize your own needs. 6. The keeper of your old self, Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But this friend loved who you were, and they resist, sometimes gently, sometimes violently, every step you take toward who you're becoming. They lure you back into old habits, old stories, old insecurities, because your growth threatens the comfort of who they knew you as. 7. The subtle critic. They hide their knives in compliments. That's amazing, for someone like you. I could never be that reckless. Tiny barbs, disguised as care, that slowly erode your confidence, so you start second-guessing yourself, even though their doubts were never yours to carry. 8. The scarcity partner. To them, life is a limited pie. Your success means less for them. Your joy means their lack. So instead of celebrating, they flinch, withdraw, or lash out, because your abundance exposes their perceived scarcity. 9. The puppet master. They want the best for you, or so they say. But their best is always about controlling your choices, steering your path, molding your decisions. They offer advice that's really commands. Their support is a leash, not a lifeline. Now breathe for a moment. Look through these masks. Who in your life wears them? More painfully, which of these masks have you worn to keep someone else from soaring past your comfort zone? Nietzsche warned that to stand alone is the greatest act of courage, because it means stripping away every layer of comfort woven by the tribe. It means choosing clarity over company, truth over approval, and sometimes the hardest truth is that your circle is really a noose. The invisible price. Guilt and fear that tie you to dead connections. Why do you stay? Why do you keep watering relationships that have long since withered, hoping that somehow, through sheer loyalty or guilt, they'll bloom again? Most people don't stay because they're loved well. They stay because they're afraid. Afraid of loneliness. Afraid of rejection. Afraid of the echo of their own thoughts when there's no one else around to drown them out. Carl Jung once wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." Sometimes that anything is clinging to friendships that keep you small, simply because being alone would force you to finally sit with who you are and who you're not. The guilt trap. Guilt is the glue of dying relationships. It whispers that you owe it to them to stay, because of the years you've shared, because of the secrets you've entrusted, because they were there once long ago when your wounds were fresh and you didn't know better. But what if the truth is harsher? What if the debt was already paid? And now, every day you stay, you're simply overpaying with pieces of your own future. The fear of being the bad one. No one wants to be seen as cruel, as selfish, as someone who outgrows others and leaves them behind. But Nietzsche would argue, is it really selfish to pursue the fullest expression of your soul? Or is it selfish of them to demand that you remain stunted, simply so they won't have to confront their own stagnation? This is the quiet hell most people live in, choosing guilt over growth, choosing a crowded room over an authentic life, the illusion of irreplaceability. We tell ourselves, but I can't lose them. They know me. They've been through everything with me. Yes, they've known the wounded, apologetic, limited version of you. They've been through your darkest hours, sometimes because they were the ones keeping you there. What if the next chapter of your life requires people who haven't yet decided what your ceiling is? People who see your evolution not as betrayal, but as beautiful necessity. The subtle terror of empty space. Most people would rather fill their lives with half friends, half lovers, half comforts, than face the raw, empty space of solitude. But Viktor Frankl, survivor of horrors few can imagine, wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Sometimes the situation you can't change is them. Sometimes the challenge is to stand alone in the vast quiet and learn to be your own companion before inviting anyone else to join you there." Who benefits from your smallness? Ask yourself this brutal question. Who gains when you stay small? Who feels safer when you doubt yourself? Who seems relieved when you downplay your dreams? If the answer is someone close to you, then you're not just paying the price of stagnation, you're funding their comfort with your potential, the hidden transaction. The hardest part isn't always the friendships you know are bad, it's the ones that are fine, comfortable, familiar. They aren't toxic in any overt way, but they hold you in place like warm hands that never let go. And so you stay. Not because your soul sings here, but because leaving feels like ripping yourself out of the only soil you've ever known, even if that soil is slowly choking your roots. So many people say they want to change, to grow, to heal, but they keep their old circle intact, as if you could build a cathedral of your highest self on foundations that were only ever meant to house your wounds. Nietzsche would tell you, no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself. So ask, who are you still paying, and how much longer can you afford the cost? Nietzsche, Jung, and the necessary cut. Why letting go is brutal. Self-love. You've been taught that love means holding on, that loyalty means staying, that goodness means sacrificing your own becoming for the comfort of others. But what if that's the greatest betrayal? Not of them, but of yourself. Nietzsche's raw challenge. Nietzsche didn't want you to be polite. He didn't want you to be liked. He wanted you to become who you are. That short sentence carries the violence of rebirth, because becoming who you are means tearing off the layers that were glued onto you by family, by old lovers, by well-meaning friends who only ever wanted you to stay recognizable. To them, your growth is a threat, a rebellion. It says, I refuse to stay inside the limits you set for me. And so, to protect their delicate equilibrium, they will resist. They will guilt. They will retreat. Jung's mirror of shadows, Carl Jung, spoke of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming your true self, integrating your unconscious, facing your shadows. But here's the sinister twist. Other people often prefer you not to individuate. Because when you start doing shadow work, when you pull your fears and traumas into the light, it disrupts the silent contracts your friendships were built on. You were the one who never said no, the one who dimmed your light to keep the group comfortable, the one who carried their chaos so they wouldn't have to. When you change that role, they don't always applaud. They panic, because your evolution demands they confront their own arrested development, and not everyone is willing to go there. Cutting isn't hate, it's choosing life. Letting go isn't about despising them. It's about loving your future self enough to make space for her to exist. Imagine carrying a backpack filled with rocks. Each stone is a person who wants you to stay exactly as you are. They're not evil, they're just heavy. And if you try to climb the mountain of your own becoming while dragging them along, you will either break under the weight or settle for halfway up. The brutality of honest self-love. Real self-love isn't bubble baths and affirmations. It's the savage decision to prune your life of anything, or anyone, that poisons your growth. It's standing in front of the mirror, looking into your own tired eyes and whispering, I love you enough to lose them. And yes, it will hurt. Because cutting off relationships feels like cutting off pieces of your own history. Sometimes it is. But Nietzsche would remind you, the snake which cannot cast its skin has to die. If you don't shed these relationships, You'll keep circling the same stagnant pool, telling yourself stories of loyalty, while your spirit slowly suffocates. The paradox: losing to truly gain. You might be terrified of emptiness, terrified of the echo of your own thoughts in the silence left behind. But it is precisely in that silence that the seeds of your real life start to grow. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who they need, not who they remember, not who keeps the peace." So yes, let go. Let it break your heart. Let it carve out spaces inside you that ache. Because only empty hands can grasp new gifts. Only empty rooms can be filled with fresh laughter. Only an uncluttered soul can finally step into its vast waiting potential. The lonely dance, rebuilding a circle that nourishes who you're becoming. So you've let go. Or at least, you're standing on the trembling edge of letting go. The spaces they used to fill now echo. You walk into your own life and there are empty chairs at every table. At first it feels like grief. And it is. Because grieving isn't just for death. It's for every version of yourself you've had to bury. Every false friendship you finally released. Every familiar comfort that became too small for the person you're fighting to become. Learning the art of solitude. Most people sprint from solitude as if it were fire. They cram their days with noise, their calendars with obligations, their hearts with half-connections, anything to avoid hearing their own raw thoughts. But Nietzsche didn't fear solitude. He sought it. Because solitude is the furnace where true individuality is forged. No one can build you the bridge on which you, and only you, must cross the river of life. Can you bear the silence long enough to hear your own soul's voice? To sift through what is truly yours and what was only ever borrowed from the crowd? The surprising gift of empty space. When you clear out the weeds, something miraculous happens. New growth begins, shy, tentative, miraculous. People start to appear who aren't threatened by your dreams, who don't flinch at your honesty, who can hold your shadow without running from it. But here's the catch. You have to endure the in-between, the aching period where there is no one, not the old tribe, not yet the new. It's like standing naked in winter, trusting that spring will come, choosing mirrors, not chains. When you start building your new circle, don't fill it just to avoid loneliness. Choose intentionally. Jung would say, seek those who reflect your potential, not your limitations. Friends who challenge you to be more, not just echo back who you used to be. Who lights up when you succeed, not because they get something from it, but simply because your joy adds to theirs. Who sits with your pain without making it about them. Who asks uncomfortable questions because they care about your truth more than your temporary comfort. That's your tribe. Or at least the beginning of it. Quality over quantity, always maybe before you had dozens of friends, each one demanding a different mask. Now you might have two, or one, or none, for a season. But these new bonds, when they come, will not be built on guilt or shared wounds alone. They'll be forged in mutual respect for each other's becoming. Each of you guardians of the other's unfolding. The quiet power of being alone, but not lonely. There's a sacred difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is hunger. Solitude is a feast you prepare for yourself. It's in solitude that your mind finally stops echoing with other people's doubts. Your desires become clearer, your edges sharper, your soul louder. And when you meet others from this place, whole, honest, awake, you won't cling out of fear. You'll choose out of alignment. You might discover that when you no longer need people to fill your voids, the right ones arrive freely. Because your energy no longer screams, "Complete me." It whispers calmly, "Walk with me if you dare grow too." And maybe that's what Nietzsche wanted all along. Not for you to be alone forever, but for you to stand so firmly in who you are that any connection becomes an act of conscious love, not desperate survival. So if you've cleared your garden and it looks barren now, be patient. New things take root in silence. You are not empty. You are ready.